Welcome to the Be That Healing Girl podcast. And today on this episode, we're going to talk about mistakes in treating anxious attachment triggers, okay? And when I say mistakes, I just also want to introduce to you the idea and the concept of being really gentle with yourself. And I'm very conscious of, especially with the girls, the people that are listening to my podcast, you have a real good ability to find what isn't working, okay? And hyper fixate on that because it's a little perfectionistic. So I want to just introduce, and I want you to take a breath and just recognize that this is the path of healing is about acceptance and gentleness. And so as you're hearing some of these pieces that I'm going to bring forward for you and to share in a different light, that really you want to look at these pieces through the lens of love and being really gentle with yourself. So if you also know me or in my community, like this is not the first or the last time you'll ever hear me say this, but being gentle is the path of healing. So I want to talk about triggers. And when I say anxious attachment trigger, I mean, have you ever spiraled into overthinking? You've got locked in on what is not going well, and that one missed text has set you off, or that one kind of thing that they said and it just they missed the point. And you know what I'm talking about. If you've felt an anxious attachment trigger, then this is nothing new for you. This is like a Tuesday, okay? So I want to dive into that today. And if you're new here, my name is Claire. I'm a relationship coach, and I love specifically helping high achievers, high performers, girlies who are climbing the corporate ladder. Maybe you are director level, or you've got people direct reporting to you, or maybe you are in medicine and medical school. You've got letters behind your name. You know what I'm talking about. Or maybe you're an entrepreneur where you have different businesses. You've got investments, or you have built a portfolio of clients. And at the same time that you are really excelling in your career and you've got it together, you are sucking at staying calm in the relationship and not spiraling and not overthinking. So if that is you, then you are in the right spot. Welcome, welcome. And if you're enjoying this episode or any other, and I'm talking to you, hitting the 5-star. Seriously, I'm talking to you. Don't lurk here. I really appreciate hitting the 5-star. It really means a lot. And we are doing this together. Like you and I, as I'm plugged into your earphones, we are co-creating this. This is gonna sound so woo. I'm just gonna go there. I can feel when I talk and I share these nuggets of wisdom, I really tap into you across this vibration of sound. I tap into what you might be struggling with, what you're experiencing, and this is a co-creation. I could not do this podcast without you, and it means a lot when you just give a little bit back. So thank you for doing that. Okay, so I want to talk about these mistakes in treating anxious triggers, and your girl over here has a history of this, and I definitely know these mistakes because I made these freaking mistakes, okay? I have made these mistakes, and not just once, not just with like one relationship. This was a deep, deep subconscious pattern for me, okay? It was deep. And I also feel that I have learned more and more in this day and age around who I am and the ways and the patterns that I have perpetuated these mistakes and kept them going and been in a cycle in my relationships, my past relationships, basically all of them. And I just want to preface this with, this is my personal recant around this, my own awakenings, and I have really come to a realization. I probably should go talk to somebody who could diagnose this, but it is pretty obvious to me that I have ADHD. Again, I should get tested. I'm on the way to do that. Also, Craig has 15 years of teaching experience, and one day I asked him, do I have ADHD? And he literally looked at me like I had a horn growing out of my head and said, absolutely you do. What are you talking about? So I'm just going to say that I'm pretty clear on that. Do I want to get diagnosed? I don't know. It doesn't really matter. And I also say this because I know for some of us it does matter, but I want to specifically well, I'll just talk through my own process. Is that, can I get diagnosed? Can I go talk to somebody? Sure. But like, what's that going to prove? Right? That doesn't really change my reality. That doesn't change anything. Could I get a medication? Sure. Probably not the route for me. But I will say that there's been something that I'm learning in the language, which is something that I also, I want to say that this is, have understood as a piece that can be correlated to ADHD, but I also can make a really strong argument that all of us, every human has a way of hiding who we authentically are. And the proper term in the realm of ADHD would be masking. And I would also just make a really compelling argument that my husband has masked his authentic self from himself and other people, including myself, for like ever. So I just want to say that, yes, it might be more prevalent in certain areas, but we all do this. We all have different ways of masking and pretending to be something that we're not. Okay. And so again, I'm not an expert. Please, like, you feel free to DM me and say, share with me any insight that you have. But I'm just really clear that we all have ways that we don't show up authentically. Okay. And I say this because obviously I like to share who the person that I love when I'm speaking through the airwaves to you. This is the person that I just know inside and out because you are me and I am you. And this is a very particular type of person that I'm talking to that is high achieving. And the irony is that if I'm saying this to you and you're like, well, like anybody could do this, that no, like, you are in a place of excellence. Like, it's so funny as I talk to my clients and I hear these different things like, oh, casually did beauty pageants and placed really well, and oh, casually I was a valedictorian, casually I went to this seven sister school, oh, casually I have two huge degree. Like, what? It's so interesting because you might have these really incredible pieces and facets to what makes you amazing, but at the same time you're like, that's not a big deal, anybody could do that. So if you've ever thought that, that's you, I'm talking to you. Okay. And this is such an indicator for my favorite person to work with, because you have built definitely a repertoire and a certain way of making choices and behaving that goes so radically deep. I don't know if you guys have picked up on my socials. I am Asian American. I'm Filipino American, and add on top of that any kind of layer of cultural pressure. First generation immigrant, eldest daughter. I happen to be the youngest daughter, but like, so we're all kind of jacked up anyway. But that also adds a layer of the conditioning that is required for you to not be your authentic self. That to be successful, to be get the accolades, to get the grades, to be excellent in some way and excel is so deeply enmeshed with your sense of identity and sense of self. And so a lot of these mistakes that I want to go into are very unconscious and very much like, I used to think when I would look at these personality traits, these qualities, I would literally just think, well, that's how it should be. That's how it always has been, and that's who I am. And I just want to say, really? Are you sure? Really? So I say that because I really want you to, again, stay open and stay honest with yourself around these pieces. Okay. So some of the mistakes when we are triggered, and that when we look at healing and moving in the direction of healing, is a mistake that we make is, number one, we feel like we can't show weakness. Okay. Which is also super interesting because I can't tell you, when I do interviews for people for one-on-one coaching, it is so interesting to me that like the buttons are so tight on keeping a lid on the emotions, and inevitably the dam breaks because we can't keep it all locked in. But it's so part of how we want to operate, that we can't, showing weakness is bad. Showing weakness is dangerous. Showing weakness or vulnerability is just, you just don't do that. It was never shown to you. It was never okay. So, in that mistake of not being able to be vulnerable, a lot of times, this is just one example of a reaction, and this all really depends on the person and the root of your particular anxious attachment. But a lot of times the mistake is that in that not showing of weakness, there is this volatile nature. Like, we kind of overreact, or we explode, or we just, like, it all kind of comes out. Sometimes it's word vomit, sometimes it's throwing things. I don't know. Everybody's different. But that is a mistake. In that mistake, that I can't actually show this, it's problematic. Okay, so that's one mistake. The second mistake is we try to control the environment. Okay, we try to manage things. And so a common thing, a mistake, is like, I'm just gonna, like, take time for myself. Now, don't confuse this with intentional time to be single, to go within. I am talking this is why it requires radical honesty. Are you saying you're not going to date because you're triggered? Because, oof, that hurt, that rejection hurt, and I'm just going to control my environment and maintain singleness because I'm actually dealing with my trigger, but not really dealing with it. I'm just trying to isolate and manage the environment. So I just, again, want to be very conscious that choosing to work deeply on yourself from an aligned, a regulated, and rational space is different than saying, I'm just, like, eh, that kind of energy. I'm not gonna, like, my funny voice. I just, right? Like, that's a trigger. And then a lot of times I will notice that the same person that said that will go back in the dating pool a week later, 2 weeks later, a month later, right? It's from a place of wound, not a place of wholeness and regulation and sovereign choice. So that's a mistake. Another mistake, and I was real good at this, super good. Okay, this was like essentially my 20s. The mistake is just jumping from one relationship to the next. Okay, and I say jump. I am being very kind about how I'm saying this, but I would just go from one relationship to the next. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? I'm not proud of it, but that's what I did because I really couldn't sit with myself. I wanted to go from one relationship to the next because really it was so uncomfortable to be honest with myself. So this is why I recommend it. We have to be honest around it. So another mistake is kind of jumping from one to the next. And this last one is a favorite. And these are just the top four that I thought of for today. But intellectualizing. And if you don't know what I mean by intellectualizing, if you have ever been triggered and you get hell bent, you cannot let it go, that you have to figure it out. You have to find, you're going to pull up Google, you're going to find the podcast episode, you're going to figure out and pick apart and really get it lined up in your brain. What went wrong? How can I fix it? What's really happening? And I say this with so much love, that is only making matters worse. That's actually the moment you start intellectualizing and going into that space of, I got to think about it, I got to figure it out, you're perpetuating the cycle. In fact, you're just pouring gasoline on the fire. That's actually what is happening. So when we keep making these mistakes again and again, okay, this is also just like another layer deeper of who I know my clients are and who I know you might be struggling with. If you keep doing this, if you keep this pattern, nobody's going to come save you. I love you. I love you so much, but nobody's going to come save you. It really comes down to being willing to look at the pattern, to look at the history, not with criticism, but with, wow, okay, how much longer can I keep going with this? And I want you to get real with yourself. How much longer can you really go with this? I'm also going to say this, like, for me, my clock was kind of ticking. This is not a lie. When I was looking at Craig and we were getting really clear, I was like, holy cow, this either I am going to sit and with the discomfort of vulnerability and opening and surrendering and deepening into this relationship, because either I'm going to figure it out with him, or we're going to break up and I'm just going to attract another person and start all over again. And not from I got to start all over again, but like I'm just avoiding the deeper work. I have to change for me. I had to change for me, period. So I just say that because part of healing the triggers, part of not making the same mistakes is actually the wisdom, right? Are you doing things differently? And I've mentioned this before, what we don't change, we choose. Okay? Because we can be, oh yeah, I'm taking walks and I'm doing hot girl walks and I'm meditating and but nothing's really changing. This is what why the honesty is so important. Then to do the same thing again and again and to expect a different result is the definition of insanity. Like, we actually have to change. So I say that because you can make a different choice for yourself. You can. So that's my thought on that. And if you are listening to this, just know that the next training around relationship triggers is coming up. That is the topic for April. We're going to talk about how to repair relationship triggers. When you are stuck in the spiral, you're in the same cycle again and again. That is what we're talking about. And there is going to be a masterclass, an implementation day, an action taker toolkit, all of the education and the things that you can tangibly implement to start to heal that in the Healing Girl Gang coming up in April. And speaking of the Healing Girl Gang, got a mailbox question from Rowena. Let me know which one that is. So what's fun is that I pull from the mailbox in the Healing Girl Gang and answer a question in there. And so Rowena says, it took my boyfriend most of a year to want a relationship. We were already friends. Then there were a few weeks where he seemed to want to be together, but he quickly grew cold and distant. Then we were in a situationship territory for some months. About a year and a half ago, he agreed to date officially. Slowly, we got closer. Slow is the key word. He only told his sister about me a month ago, saying things like, I love you, but I'm still not sure, which to me was very hurtful and triggered my anxiousness in a big way. He has come such a long way. Now he is responding to my calls, texting often, sending cute messages, introducing me to family. We see each other almost every day. He says he loves me all the time and he sees a future with me for years to come. But I still feel unloved. Like I have all the things I wanted, but I had to work so hard for that it somehow felt less like real love. I seem to be craving some romantic gesture to make it right, even though that's ridiculous, but that feeling is ruining a good thing. So very common kind of position to be in here. And here is a couple of pieces. So I wanted, the thing that really I'm tapping into that feels important to address is that things are slow. So a mistake, I think, and I know, is that when our fear is activated, it creates urgency. Fear creates urgency. And when we are operating from a place of fear, it doesn't matter what we're doing. It doesn't really go well, right? I don't know, like doing math at the front of the class. Like, God, no, can't do that. Not going to do that well, right? So when there's fear introduced into the space, we tend to rush, we skip steps. It's not really conducive for deepening. And what I'm actually hearing here and seeing here is that he's warming up, things are shifting, and PS, like this, yes, he started slow, but it sounds like he started really matching you and meeting you, and at the same time you're still feeling unloved. So the first thing is, okay, it sounds and looks like, again, I don't have all the context and all the information, but it looks like he actually is showing up for you. And this, I still often feel unloved. I mean, then my question is that from a place of fear? Or is that your fear talking, or is there actually evidence, right? So And then when you say you feel unloved, I seem to be craving some romantic gesture to make it right. Well, then what is that romantic gesture? Right. And then and just play it out. Like if it's like, okay, I want him to buy me a dozen roses. Okay. Then just like in your head, he bought you 1,000 roses. Did I say 1,000? Yeah, sure. Why not? 1,000 roses. Are you going to feel like he actually loves you? Or is that going to just dissipate by the next day or the next week? Right. So if that is the answer, then you want to look at something on the other. It takes two to tango, right? So if they are showing up, and granted, it was a slow grow, but it sounds like he's really grown into it. And at the same time, if you can name that romantic gesture, okay, because it seems like very much in your head. Love you, but that's what it kind of sounds like. Well, then, if you could have go big, the romantic gesture, would you actually, from a clear and grounded place, would that actually make you feel better? Now, the other piece here that is also kind of dicey is, are you waiting for him to do something to make you feel loved? Because you are going to lose in that power game. That is giving your power away to somebody else to fulfill for you. Okay? Where they have to do something to make me feel loved, that is like a recipe to feeling unloved, because it's not, you are waiting for this external validation to feel good about it. And when we are looking at relationships from that lens and from that place of it's your job, then that it's natural. It makes a lot of sense why you feel unloved in that way. So things to think about, and you are in the Healing Girl Gang. It is a process. Be gentle with yourself. And again, if you're like, it's not happening fast enough, like that is what you want to work with. That's what you want to work through. So that's what I feel on that. I hope that lands for you, and I'm sending you lots of love, and I'll see you in the gang. Mwah.